The smell of recycled air filled the observation deck as David Ross pressed his palm against the cold glass. Earth rotated below, peaceful and unaware of what was about to happen. He had traveled to the Galactic Council station dozens of times, but today felt different. Today felt wrong. The summons had arrived without warning. No agenda, no explanation, just an order to appear before the council immediately. 3 generations of humanity had learned to obey such orders without question. That was what treaties did to a species. They turned proud civilizations into obedient servants. Ross adjusted his formal jacket and walked toward the grand chamber. The corridors curved in ways that made human eyes uncomfortable, designed by species who saw reality differently. Aliens of every shape and size moved past him, some nodding in acknowledgement, others looking through him as if he did not exist. Humanity ranked low in the galactic hierarchy. Very low. The chamber doors opened with a hiss. Inside, the council members sat in their elevated positions, arranged in a perfect semicircle that forced anyone addressing them to crane their neck upward. Psychological dominance through architecture. Ross had studied every trick they used. Vorn, the council leader, shifted on his throne-like seat. His blue-gray scales caught the light as he leaned forward, four-fingered hands gripping the armrests. Those hands had signed the treaties that bound Earth. Those hands had signed similar treaties with 40 other species across the galaxy. Ambassador Ross, Vorn said, his voice carrying that mixture of amusement and contempt that Ross had grown to hate. How gracious of humanity to respond so promptly. The council called Earth answers. Ross kept his voice neutral, show no weakness, show no anger. Indeed, we have a new requirement for your species. Vorn gestured, and a holographic display materialized between them. Agricultural data, grain production, livestock numbers. Earth will provide 40% of its food production to the Drath Empire beginning next month. Ross felt his stomach drop. 40%, that would mean rationing, hunger, maybe famine in some regions. The Terra Accord specifically protects Earth's resource sovereignty. We cannot. Cannot, another council member, an insectoid creature covered in chitinous plates, clicked its mandibles in what might have been laughter. You speak of cannot to us. Vorn waved a dismissive hand. The Terra Accord is subject to council interpretation. We interpret it to allow this measure. The Drath Empire requires sustenance. They have exhausted their own agricultural capacity through, shall we say, ambitious expansion. You will compensate for their shortfall. And if Earth refuses, Ross knew the answer, but he needed to hear them say it. Refusal is not an option. Vorn's expression shifted to something resembling a smile, though the effect was more predatory than friendly. However, if you require motivation, we have prepared a demonstration. 3 cities. We are not unreasonable. We will allow you to choose which 3. Orbital bombardment from our enforcement platform should prove adequately persuasive. The other council members murmured their approval. This was entertainment for them. Watching lesser species squirm brought them joy. Ross clenched his fists behind his back, keeping his face carefully neutral. How long do we have to comply? 30 days. We are generous with time if not with resources. Vorn leaned back, clearly enjoying himself. You may go now, Ambassador. Do give our regards to your world government. Tell them the Council looks forward to Earth's cooperation. Ross turned and walked out, forcing himself to move slowly to show no fear. Behind him, he heard the Council members laughing. The sound followed him all the way to the docking bay. His shuttle departed from the station with clearance granted by board traffic controllers who process dozens of ships every hour. Earth grew larger in the viewport as he approached. From space, it looked so beautiful, so fragile. His communication panel lit up with incoming calls. The news had already spread. Geneva wanted briefing. New York demanded answers. Beijing required immediate consultation. Everyone wanted to know what humanity would do. Ross ignored them all and opened a secure channel to a very specific frequency. The encryption was older technology, the kind the Council considered too primitive to bother monitoring. Sometimes being seen as backwards had advantages. "Kim, are you there?" Static than a woman's voice. "Ross, what happened?" "They pushed too far. 40% of our food. 30 days. 3 cities get bombed if we refuse." Silence on the other end. Ross could imagine Rachel Kim in her underground laboratory, processing the information with that brilliant mind of hers. They had known each other for years, shared secrets that would get them both executed if the Council found out. "How long have you been working on the satellite hack?" Ross asked. 6 months, maybe 7. It is close, Ross, very close, but not ready." "Make it ready. We have 30 days. "And then what? Even if I crack the enforcement satellites, even if we turn their own weapons against them, that only handles the immediate threat. The Council has thousands of ships, tens of thousands." Ross watched Earth fill his viewport. Somewhere down there, his daughter was teaching school. His brother was farming. Billions of people living their lives, unaware that their species had reached a breaking point. "Then we make them understand that humanity will not go quietly. 3 generations, Kim. 3 generations of bowing and scraping and accepting whatever they demanded. It ends." "Coal is ready," Kim said quietly. "She has been ready for years. The hidden shipyards, the prototype drives, the weapons research on Mars, all of it. She is just waiting for someone to give the order." 30 days, Ross repeated. "Tell Cole to start mobilizing. Tell her to be quiet about it, but start. And Kim, crack those satellites. When the Council comes to enforce their demands, I want to turn their own guns on them." "Understood. Ross, are we really doing this? Are we really going to war with the entire Galactic Council?" Ross looked at Earth one more time, then activated his landing sequence. "They fired the first shot when they threatened to murder millions of civilians for refusing to starve. We are just going to fire back. Tell everyone to get ready. In 30 days, either humanity breaks free or we die trying. I know which outcome I prefer." The shuttle entered atmosphere, friction heating the hull as it descended toward Geneva. Below, humanity went about its day, shopping and working and loving and living. They deserved better than perpetual subjugation. They deserved the chance to stand as equals among the stars. 30 days, the countdown had begun. Rachel Kim had not seen sunlight in 3 days. The Geneva laboratory existed 500 feet below ground, built during the last failed rebellion when humanity still had enough spirit to fight back. That uprising had been crushed, naturally. The Council did not tolerate defiance. But they had missed this facility, and for 30 years it had served as humanity's secret shame and secret hope. She stood before a holographic projection of the enforcement satellite network. 42 orbital platforms surrounded Earth, each armed with weapons capable of turning entire cities to ash. The Council called them peacekeepers. Humanity called them slave collars. "Run the simulation again," she told her assistant, a young programmer named Peter who looked like he had not slept in days either. The hologram shifted, showing a mock attack sequence. Virtual codes penetrated the satellite systems, bypassing security protocols, accessing weapons control. Then, as before, the simulation crashed. "Same result," Peter said, rubbing his eyes. "The 7th firewall adapts too quickly. We crack the first 6, but by the time we reach 7, the entire system locks down and alerts Council security." Kim paced around the hologram, studying it from every angle. The satellites used Council technology, far more advanced than anything humanity was supposed to possess. But she had been reverse engineering confiscated alien devices for years. She understood their systems better than most Council engineers. "What if we do not crack the 7th firewall? What if we make it think we are supposed to be there?" Peter looked up. "Administrative override. Kim, we do not have Council access codes." No, but we have something better. We have 3 decades of council arrogance. She pulled up another display showing communication logs between the satellites and council command. Look at the pattern. Every 6 hours they receive a status ping. Every 6 hours they respond with an all-clear signal. It is completely automated. No encryption because the council assumes no one would dare interfere. So we spoof the status ping, make the satellites think council command is giving them new orders. Exactly. They will not even check credentials because their entire security model assumes humans are too primitive to attempt this. Kim smiled without humor. Being underestimated has advantages. While Peter began coding the spoof protocol, Kim opened a secure channel to Luna Base. The face that appeared on her screen belonged to Admiral Patricia Cole, a woman whose military career had been deliberately stunted by treaty restrictions. The Council feared competent human commanders. They preferred their subject species led by mediocrity. Kim, tell me you have good news. Maybe. The satellite hack is progressing. We should have control within 2 weeks. Cole nodded, but her expression remained grim. 2 weeks puts us at day 16 of 30, cutting it close. What about their response time once we take control? 30 seconds between command input and weapons activation. But Admiral, once we fire those satellites at Council ships, they will know what we did. They will send reinforcements. Let them send everything they have. Cole's jaw tightened. I have been cataloging our hidden assets, shipyards in the asteroid belt that the Council thinks are civilian mining operations, weapons foundries on Mars disguised as terraforming equipment, prototype drives that we tested in the outer system where their sensors could not reach. How many ships? Enough for 1 good ambush, maybe 2 if we get lucky. After that, we will be fighting with whatever we can build while under siege. Cole leaned closer to the camera. Kim, I need you to understand something. Once we start this, there is no going back. Win or lose, humanity's relationship with the Council ends. Either we break free or they exterminate us as an example. Kim thought of her parents who had lived their entire lives under Council rule. They had accepted it, adapted to it, found what happiness they could within the limits imposed on them. She thought of the children being born today, who would grow up either free or dead. Then we better make sure we win. I will have the satellites ready. You make sure our ships are prepared. After Cole disconnected, Kim returned to the hologram. Peter had made progress on the spoof code, but something else caught her attention. A secondary system within the satellites, one she had not noticed before. Peter, what is this subsystem here? The one tagged as environmental monitoring. He zoomed in, examining the code structure. It looks like a passive sensor array, probably tracking Earth's atmosphere, radiation levels, that sort of thing. Kim studied it more carefully. The sensors were far more sophisticated than needed for simple environmental data. They were tied into the weapons targeting system in ways that made no sense unless. They are not environmental sensors, they are population trackers. The realization made her feel sick. The satellites are not just weapons platforms, they are counting us, monitoring population density, energy usage, industrial output. They know exactly where everyone lives, where we work, where we gather. Why would they need that level of detail? So when they want to make an example, they can maximize casualties with minimal effort. 3 cities, Vorn said. These sensors will tell them which 3 cities would create the most terror, the most disruption, the most suffering. Peter looked pale. Can we turn the sensors off? Better, we can feed them false data. Make them think population centers are somewhere they are not. When they target their demonstration strikes, they will hit empty desert or ocean instead of cities. That buys time, but it does not solve the core problem. Kim smiled, and this time there was genuine warmth in it. No, but it keeps people alive while we solve the core problem. Start coding the false data feeds. I want those satellites seeing ghosts before the month is out. The work continued through another sleepless night. Around her, the laboratory hummed with activity as other researchers pursued their own projects. New shield configurations, improved hull materials, weapons that could punch through Council armor. Every innovation was small, incremental, nothing that would win a war by itself. But together, they represented humanity's refusal to accept permanent subjugation. A message arrived from the surface. Ambassador Ross had delivered the Council's ultimatum to the world government. Public reaction was spreading across every continent. Some people demanded compliance, terrified of orbital bombardment. Others called for resistance, willing to die rather than starve slowly. The world government itself was paralyzed, unable to decide between submission and suicide. Kim ignored it all. Politicians could debate. Citizens could argue. Her job was simpler. She had to crack the satellite network, turn the Council's own weapons against them, and do it in time to matter. 13 days left. The hologram flickered as Peter implemented another code sequence. The virtual attack progressed through the first 6 firewalls, approaching the 7th. This time, the spoofed credentials slipped past the security check. The 7th firewall opened like a door welcoming an old friend. "We are in," Peter whispered. Kim allowed herself one moment of relief, then got back to work. Being in was just the beginning. Now they had to maintain access, map every system, understand every weapon, prepare every contingency. When the 30 days expired and the Council came to enforce their demands, humanity would be ready to bite back. Luis Hernandez drifted through the cargo bay of his mining ship, checking the hidden compartments one more time. From the outside, the vessel looked like any other civilian hauler working the asteroid belt. Old hull plating, patched repairs, registration codes that marked it as legitimate commercial traffic. The Council's inspectors had cleared it a dozen times without suspecting a thing. But beneath the civilian exterior, the ship was something else entirely. Weapon mounts disguised as mining equipment. Military-grade engines hidden behind civilian casings. Hull reinforcement that could survive combat, not just micrometeorite impacts. Lewis had spent 15 years preparing for a war he hoped would never come. His communication panel chimed. Secure frequency. That meant either trouble or opportunity, and lately those two things were the same. Hernandez here. This is Admiral Cole. I am reaching out to certain civilian operators with military experience. We may need your services soon. Lewis laughed, though there was no humor in it. Let me guess. The Council finally pushed too far, and now Earth is planning something stupid and brave. That is one way to describe it. Are you in? He looked around his ship at the life he had built in the belt. Good life, quiet life, profitable life. All of it dependent on the Council allowing humanity to exist. What do you need? Everything. Ships, pilots, anyone willing to fight. We have maybe 2 weeks before things get very complicated. 2 weeks is not much time to organize a fleet. I know. That is why I am calling everyone today. The asteroid belt has over 3,000 registered civilian vessels. If even 10% of them have the kind of modifications I think they have, that gives us real numbers. Lewis pulled up his ship's hidden weapons manifest. Plasma cutters converted to beam weapons. Mining charges repurposed as missiles. Point defense systems disguised as debris shields. Nothing fancy, but effective enough if used right. I am in. But Admiral, most of us out here are haulers and miners, not soldiers. We know how to navigate asteroid fields and avoid pirates. We do not know how to fight Council warships. You know something more valuable. You know how to operate in chaotic environments, how to use terrain, how to survive on improvisation. The Council fights in formation, by the book, with rigid tactical doctrine. You fight however you need to fight. That flexibility will matter. After disconnecting, Lewis sent out messages to every spacer he trusted. The responses came back quickly. Some people said no, unwilling to risk their lives and ships. but most said yes. The belt had always attracted a certain kind of person, the type who left Earth because they valued freedom over safety. Turned out those people were very interested in keeping that freedom. 20 ships confirmed within the first hour, 50 by the end of the day. By the time Lewis finished coordinating, he had promises from nearly 200 civilian vessels, each one modified in secret, each one ready to fight. On Luna Base, Admiral Cole watched the tactical display with growing satisfaction. The civilian fleet forming in the asteroid belt was larger than she had hoped. Combined with the military vessels hidden across the solar system, humanity might actually have a fighting chance. Her chief of staff, a former Navy commander named Williams, studied the same display with less optimism. Even with civilian support, we are outnumbered badly. The Council task force they will send to enforce the ultimatum will have at least 50 ships, professional warships, not modified haulers. 50 ships they think are facing a defenseless world, Cole corrected. They will come in expecting easy compliance, not coordinated resistance. Kim will control the enforcement satellites. Hernandez will hit them from the belt. Our hidden fleet will strike from Luna. The Council will be caught between 3 attack vectors they do not expect. And after we destroy their task force, they will send more, a lot more. Cole nodded. That is why the first battle has to send a message. We do not just need to win. We need to win so decisively that other species start questioning Council authority. If we can make the Council look weak, we might gain allies. The next 10 days passed in frantic preparation. Ships moved into position, trying to look like normal traffic. Weapons were tested in remote locations where Council sensors would not detect them. Pilots drilled on attack patterns and retreat vectors. Everyone understood the plan could fall apart in seconds if the Council suspected anything. Ambassador Ross continued attending Council sessions, playing his role as defeated diplomat seeking futile negotiations. Vorn enjoyed the performance, granting small delays and meaningless concessions that changed nothing. The Council leader believed humanity would ultimately submit, as they always had. Why would this time be different? On day 28, with only 2 days remaining before the ultimatum expired, Kim sent the final confirmation. The enforcement satellites were completely compromised. She could fire them at will, and the Council would not know until weapons started hitting their ships. Lewis and his civilian fleet held position near the belt's inner edge, hidden among thousands of asteroids. Every ship ran silent, using only passive sensors, looking like dead rocks drifting through space. Council patrol ships passed within a few thousand kilometers and detected nothing. Cole's military vessels waited in lunar orbit and scattered positions throughout the inner system. Older ships that the Council thought were barely functional, maintained just well enough to satisfy treaty requirements. In reality, they had been secretly upgraded over years of careful work, their true capabilities hidden behind deliberate inefficiency during inspections. Day 30 arrived, the deadline passed. Earth sent no agricultural shipments to the Council, no compliance, no submission, just silence. On the Galactic Council station, Vorn received the reports and smiled his predatory smile. Humanity had chosen defiance. How amusing, how ultimately futile. Send the enforcement task force, he ordered. Destroy the 3 designated cities as promised. Make it spectacular. I want every species in the galaxy to see what happens when you defy the Council. 60 Council warships departed from various positions, converging on Earth. They broadcast their approach openly, wanting humanity to see them coming, to feel the fear build. By the time they entered orbit, any resistance would be crushed by despair. But the Council had made a critical error. They had spent so long dominating lesser species that they had forgotten something important. Cornered animals bite back, and humanity, for all its submission over 3 generations, had never stopped being dangerous. The enforcement fleet entered Earth's orbital space in perfect formation, weapons powered and ready. Below them, the planet seemed helpless. Above them, the enforcement satellites waited in position, their weapons pointed downward as designed. Then everything changed. The satellites rotated, their weapons swiveling upward. Target locks engaged on Council ships instead of human cities. 42 platforms, 42 weapon systems, all suddenly controlled by the species they were meant to oppress. Kim sat in her underground laboratory, her fingers on the firing controls, and thought about her parents who had lived and died under Council rule. For Earth, she whispered and pressed the button. The first Council ship died before its crew understood what was happening. Energy beams designed to bombard cities from orbit tore through military-grade shields as if they were not there. The satellite weapons had been built by the Council itself, designed to penetrate any defense humanity might develop. The Council engineers had done their job too well. Explosions blossomed across Earth's orbital space. 60 Council warships had entered the system expecting an easy massacre. Instead, they found themselves under attack from weapons they had placed there themselves, controlled by prey that was supposed to be helpless. Lewis watched the carnage through his ship's sensors and felt no pity. These were the same ships that would have murdered millions of civilians. Every explosion was justice delayed but finally delivered. All civilian vessels, this is Hernandez. Execute attack pattern Delta. Hit them while they are confused. 200 modified mining ships accelerated out of the asteroid belt, engines burning at maximum. They scattered in different vectors, making themselves harder to target, using the chaos of satellite fire as cover. The Council fleet was already reeling from the orbital ambush. Now they had to deal with a swarm of small, fast targets coming from an unexpected direction. Lewis targeted the closest Council cruiser and fired his mining lasers. They were never designed as weapons, but concentrated cutting beams worked just as well on ship hulls as they did on asteroids. The cruiser's shields flared and collapsed. Secondary explosions rippled along its port side. Other civilian ships followed his lead. Individually, they were no match for military vessels, but 200 ships attacking from multiple angles, focusing fire on single targets, brought down Council warships one after another. The civilian fleet fought with the desperate creativity of people who knew this was their only chance. From Luna Base, Admiral Cole launched her hidden military fleet. 3 dreadnoughts that were supposed to be in maintenance emerged from lunar craters, their weapons hot and ready. Destroyers and frigates that had pretended to be museum pieces fired up systems the Council thought were disabled decades ago. The Council Task Force commander tried to rally his ships, but coordination was impossible. Satellite fire came from above. Civilian attacks came from the belt. Military vessels emerged from the moon. Every tactical doctrine the Council used assumed fighting a single coordinated enemy, not being surrounded by attackers using completely different strategies. All ships concentrate fire on the command carrier, Cole ordered. The Council flagship was easy to identify, broadcasting orders to the scattered fleet. Take out the leadership, and what remained would fall apart. Her 3 dreadnoughts focused their main guns on the carrier. The Council ship was massive, designed to dominate battlefields, but it was also designed to fight other military vessels in predictable engagements. It could not handle being hammered by satellite weapons from one direction, swarmed by civilian ships from another, and targeted by capital ships from a third. The carrier's shields failed. Its hull breached in a dozen places. Escape pods began ejecting as the crew abandoned ship. Lewis watched on his sensors as the flagship broke apart and felt a savage satisfaction. The Council had ruled the galaxy for centuries. Today, they learned that rule could end. But victory came with a price. A Council destroyer managed to lock onto a cluster of civilian ships and fired a spread of missiles. Lewis watched helplessly as 5 vessels, ships piloted by people he knew, disappeared in expanding fireballs. The debris scattered across the orbital plane, testament to bravery that would never be forgotten. "All civilian vessels scatter and regroup," he broadcast. "Do not bunch up, they are targeting clusters." The civilian fleet adapted instantly, each ship taking independent evasive action while continuing to harass Council vessels. This was what they were good at, flying in chaotic environments, making snap decisions, surviving on instinct. The Council crews, trained for formation combat, could not adjust fast enough. On the destroyer Defiance, Lieutenant Grace Murphy coordinated her ship's weapons fire with practiced efficiency. She was young, barely past her training, but she had been preparing for this moment her entire life. 3 generations of humans had dreamed of fighting back. She was living that dream. "Target the cruiser at Mark 7, she called to her weapons officer. "Focus on their engine section." The Defiance's guns spoke, joined by fire from 2 other destroyers. The Council cruiser tried to evade, but human targeting systems had been studying Council ship movements for decades. They knew the patterns, the standard evasive maneuvers, the predictable responses. The cruiser's engines took multiple hits and went dark, leaving it drifting helplessly. Murphy allowed herself a brief smile before moving to the next target. This was the battle her parents had told her would never come. The fight Earth was too weak to win, except they were winning. Against every prediction, every analysis, every Council assumption, humanity was winning. The battle lasted 3 hours. At the end, 58 Council ships were destroyed or disabled. 2 managed to escape, jumping to FTL with their engines barely functional. They would carry word of the disaster back to the Council, but by then it would not matter. Earth's losses were heavy: 40 civilian ships destroyed, 1 dreadnought severely damaged, 2 destroyers lost with all hands, but they had won. For the first time in 3 generations, humanity had faced the Council in open combat and emerged victorious. Admiral Cole stood in Luna Base's command center, watching the debris field that now orbited Earth. Ships, bodies, dreams, and nightmares all mixed together in the cold vacuum of space. She felt no triumph, only grim satisfaction. This was just the beginning. "Get me Ambassador Ross," she ordered. Ross appeared on the screen, still aboard the Galactic Council station. Behind him, through the observation windows, fires burned on damaged sections of the orbital facility. The shock of Earth's rebellion had spread through every corridor, every chamber, every species represented there. "Admiral, I see you kept your promise. The Council's task force is destroyed, but they will send more, a lot more." "I know, that is why I am about to do something either very brave or very stupid." Ross straightened his jacket, looking directly at the camera. "I am going to offer the galaxy an alternative to Council rule. Some species will refuse, but some might listen, and if even a few join us, we have a chance." Cole nodded. "Do it. We gave you the opening. Now you make it count." Ross disconnected and walked toward the Council chamber. Behind him, the galaxy watched and wondered if the impossible had just become possible. If humanity, weak and restricted and supposedly broken, had just lit a fire that would burn across the stars. In the asteroid belt, Luis Hernandez began the long process of counting survivors and mourning the dead. They had won the battle, but he knew the war was just beginning. The Council would come back with everything they had. "Let them come," he thought. "We were ready once, we will be ready again." Shiera had witnessed many things during her 4 decades serving the Tevari people on the Galactic Council. She had seen species rise and fall, treaties signed and broken, entire civilizations reshaped by Council decree. But she had never seen anything like the human ambassador standing before the assembled representatives, declaring that every treaty was null and void. David Ross stood alone at the center of the chamber, surrounded by alien species who could order his death with a single word. Vorn sat on his elevated throne, blue-gray scales flushed darker with rage. The council leader had expected broken humans begging for mercy. Instead, he got defiance. "You destroyed our task force," Vorn said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Do you understand what you have done? The Council will mobilize every fleet, every weapon, every resource to crush your rebellion. Earth will burn." Ross smiled, and the expression was colder than the vacuum outside. "Then Earth burns, but we will not starve quietly. We will not submit to your theft, and we will not be the last species to resist you." He activated a holographic projector, filling the chamber with images. Council ships firing on civilian populations, resource seizures that caused famines, orbital bombardments used to enforce compliance. 300 years of Council oppression, documented and undeniable. "This is what you call peace," Ross continued. "This is what you call order. Species forced to obey or die. Civilization stripped of dignity and freedom. You call us lesser beings, primitives who should be grateful for your guidance. I call you tyrants who have forgotten that power without consent is just another word for slavery." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some species shouted their agreement with Vorn, but others remained silent. Shiera watched carefully, noting which representatives looked uncomfortable, which ones avoided eye contact. The Council's unity was not as solid as it pretended to be. "The Tavari Collective wishes to speak," Shiera announced, rising from her seat. Vorn glared at her. "This is not the time for debate. The human has committed an act of war." "Then let us discuss terms of peace," Shiera replied smoothly. "The Tavari have no interest in fighting a war over the Council's food seizures. We propose negotiations between Earth and interested parties, separate from Council authority." "There will be no negotiations. There will be compliance or annihilation." But Shiera had made her move. By speaking publicly in favor of dialogue, she had given other species permission to question the Council's absolute authority. Representatives began whispering among themselves, caucusing in small groups, reconsidering positions they had held for generations. Ross pressed his advantage. "Humanity offers treaties to any species willing to treat us as equals. We will share our agricultural surplus freely with those who ask rather than demand. We will exchange technology, trade goods, build relationships based on mutual benefit rather than submission. All we ask is the same respect you give each other." "Absurd," another council member, a reptilian creature covered in ceremonial armor, slammed a clawed hand on the armrest. "Humans are a restricted species. You have no right to offer treaties to anyone." "We were restricted," Ross corrected. "But we just ended those restrictions. You can either accept new treaties built on equality or you can have no treaties at all. Your choice." Vorn rose from his throne, his full height towering over the chamber. "This session is over. Ambassador Ross, you are hereby ordered to remain on this station pending trial for crimes against the Council. Guards, detain him." But the guards did not move. They looked at each other uncertainly, then at their commanding officer, who was pointedly examining his data pad and pretending not to hear. The Council's authority was crumbling in real time. Shiera seized the moment. "The Tavari Collective formally requests immediate bilateral discussions with Earth's government. We are interested in agricultural cooperation and technology exchange." "As do the Norath," another representative added quickly. "The Pellin Unity also requests discussions." One by one, species began declaring their interest in talking to Earth directly, bypassing the Council entirely. Vorn stood frozen, watching his authority evaporate like ice under a noon sun. For 300 years, the Council had ruled through fear and the assumption that resistance was impossible. Humanity had shattered that assumption in a single morning. Ross bowed slightly to the chamber. "For those interested in dialogue, Earth welcomes you. For those who prefer conflict, we will give you the fight you are looking for. But understand this, the days of treaties imposed by force are over. From now on, humanity deals only with those who respect us. He walked out of the chamber without waiting for dismissal. Guards who should have stopped him stepped aside. Representatives who should have condemned him watched in silence. The galaxy had just witnessed a power shift that would echo for generations. Back on Earth, Rachel Kim received the first delegation of alien scientists. They arrived nervous, uncertain, having spent their entire lives under council restrictions on knowledge sharing. Kim greeted them with warmth and genuine enthusiasm. "Welcome to Earth. Thank you for coming despite the risks." The lead Tevari scientist, a woman named Kira, looked around the Geneva laboratory with obvious wonder. The council said human technology was primitive. This facility is more advanced than anything on our homeworld. Kim smiled. The council said many things. Most of them were lies designed to keep us weak and compliant. "Come, let me show you what we have been working on." She led them through the labs, explaining the satellite hack, the weapons modifications, the shield improvements. The Tevari scientists asked eager questions, shared their own research, proposed collaborations that would have been unthinkable a week ago. This was what the galaxy could be without the Council's artificial restrictions, species learning from each other instead of being forced into rigid hierarchies. Admiral Cole welcomed the first Tevari warships to Luna Base with military honors. The Tevari commander, a grizzled veteran named Thorn, studied the human vessels with professional interest. "Your ships are smaller than ours but better armed. Interesting design philosophy. We learn to do more with less. When you are restricted by treaty from building capital ships, you get creative with what you are allowed to have." Thorn laughed, a barking sound that translated as amusement. "The Council thought they were weakening you. Instead, they were forcing you to innovate. Their mistake, our gain. The Tevari are honored to stand with Earth. The honor is mutual. Together, we might actually survive what is coming." Because it was coming, long-range sensors detected massive fleet movements across Council space. High Commander Xyloth of the Drath Empire was assembling an armada that would dwarf anything the galaxy had seen in living memory. He would come to Earth with overwhelming force and crush the rebellion before it could spread further. Luis Hernandez watched the sensor reports and began planning. His civilian fleet had proven effective in ambush tactics. Now they needed to become raiders, hitting Council supply lines, disrupting logistics, making every parsec of space contested territory. The Council would come with superior numbers, but humanity would make them pay for every meter. The galaxy watched and waited. Some species hoped humanity would win. Others hoped they would be crushed as a warning. But everyone understood that regardless of outcome, the Council's absolute authority was over. The question now was what would replace it, and whether that replacement would be born through dialogue or written in fire across the stars. High Commander Xyloth studied the tactical display with cold satisfaction. 3,000 warships under his command, the largest fleet assembled in 2 centuries. Earth's rebellion would end in the next 72 hours. The Drath Empire did not tolerate defiance, and he would make an example that would terrify the galaxy into submission for generations. His second officer, a Drath warrior named Kreth, approached with the latest intelligence reports. "Commander, we have confirmed that several species have withdrawn their support from the Council. The Tevari, the Norath, and 4 others are now openly trading with Earth." "Let them trade," Xyloth replied. "When we reduce Earth to radioactive ash, those species will remember the price of betrayal. How long until we reach Mars' orbit?" 18 hours at current speed. Mars. Admiral Cole had chosen to make her stand there instead of at Earth itself. Smart move, giving the homeworld some distance from the battle. But it would not matter. Xyloth had enough ships to surround the entire planet and still have reserves. No amount of human courage could overcome such overwhelming force. On Mars, Grace Murphy walked through the corridors of her new command, the destroyer unbroken. The ship still smelled of fresh manufacturing, having been completed just 2 days earlier. It incorporated every lesson learned from the orbital battle, every innovation that human engineers could devise. It was also quite possibly the last ship Earth would ever build. "Captain Murphy," her weapons officer called. "Council fleet has entered the outer system. ETA to Mars orbit is 17 hours, 20 minutes. Murphy nodded. 17 hours to live or die. 17 hours to prove that humanity deserved its freedom. She activated the ship-wide intercom. "All hands, this is the captain. You know what is coming. You know we are outnumbered 6-1. You also know that people bet against humanity before and they were wrong. Whatever happens in the next day, we fight with honor, we fight with courage, and we show the galaxy what Earth means by freedom. That is all." Short speech, but her crew did not need inspiration. They needed leadership, and she would provide it. Rachel Kim worked through her last preparations in the Geneva laboratory. The satellite network was still under human control, but it would not be enough against 3,000 ships. She had calculated every scenario, run every simulation. Earth's forces could inflict heavy casualties, but they could not win through conventional means. So she had prepared something unconventional. "Peter, is the virus package ready?" Her assistant looked up from his terminal, eyes red from lack of sleep. "Ready and loaded into missile warheads. But Kim, even if we successfully infect Council ships, the virus needs time to propagate through their systems. Time we do not have." "We will make time, trust the plan." Luis Hernandez led his civilian fleet on one final raid before the main battle. Council supply ships were streaming toward Xyloth's armada, carrying ammunition, fuel, replacement parts. His raiders hit the convoy hard and fast, destroying half the supply vessels before the escorts could respond. As his ships retreated into the asteroid belt, Luis calculated the impact. Xyloth would still have enough supplies for the battle, but his reserves were now critically low. If the fight dragged on longer than expected, the Council fleet would run dry. It was a small advantage, but small advantages added up. The battle began at dawn, Earth time. Xyloth's armada entered Mars orbit in perfect formation, weapons powered and shields at maximum. They expected desperate resistance. What they got was coordinated precision. Admiral Cole had divided her forces into 3 groups. The main fleet would engage directly, drawing Council attention. Lieutenant Murphy's destroyer group would hit flanks and weak points. Luis Hernandez's civilians would conduct hit-and-run attacks, using their knowledge of orbital mechanics to stay one step ahead of Council targeting. The first wave crashed together like oceanic forces meeting. Human ships darted between Council vessels, using their smaller size for advantage. Tevari warships added their firepower, their crews fighting with the passion of people who had waited decades for this chance. Energy weapons filled space with deadly light. Murphy guided the Unbroken through the chaos with steady hands. Her target was Xyloth's command ship, specifically its communication arrays. If they could blind the Council fleet's coordination, even temporarily, it would create openings. "All weapons target the command ship's sensor masts, full barrage." The Unbroken's guns spoke, joined by 5 other destroyers. The masts were heavily shielded, but concentrated fire eventually broke through. One mast exploded, then another. Xyloth's flagship could still fight, but it was no longer effectively coordinating the fleet. At that moment, Kim triggered her virus packages. Missiles launched from hidden positions throughout the inner system, each one carrying a sophisticated computer virus designed specifically to corrupt Council ship systems. Most missiles were intercepted by point defense, but some got through, detonating close enough to Council vessels for the virus to transmit wirelessly into their networks. The virus worked slowly, invisible to Council security systems. It spread from ship to ship through normal communication channels, disguising itself as routine data. Within an hour, over 400 Council vessels were infected. Their weapons still worked, their shields still functioned, but their tactical computers began providing subtly incorrect data. Targeting solutions were off by small margins. Threat assessments prioritized the wrong targets. Coordination degraded into confusion. Xyloth recognized the problem too late. His fleet was falling apart not from damage but from corruption. Ships fired on each other by accident. Formation discipline collapsed. What should have been an overwhelming assault turned into a chaotic brawl that favored the smaller, more flexible human forces. Then the Council fleet broke. Not all of it, but enough. Species that had joined the Armada reluctantly, who feared the Drath but feared rebellion more, began withdrawing. They had come to crush a weak opponent, not die in a confused melee against an enemy that refused to fight by expected rules. Kreth, Xyloth's second officer, watched the fleet disintegrating and made a decision. The Drath had ruled through fear, demanding absolute loyalty from subordinate species. Kreth had spent his entire career taking orders from commanders who treated him as inferior. Now he saw an alternative, a galaxy where species stood as equals. He drew his sidearm and shot Xyloth in the back. The High Commander fell without a word. Kreth stepped over the body and opened a channel to Admiral Cole. "This is Acting Commander Kreth of the Drath Fleet. I am authorized to discuss terms of surrender." The battle ended not with Earth's destruction but with its validation. In the weeks that followed, David Ross led negotiations that created the Free Worlds Compact. 83 species signed the founding charter, agreeing to a simple principle: no member could impose treaties through force. Grace Murphy received command of a new ship, a joint design incorporating technology from a dozen species. Luis Hernandez established trade routes that would enrich worlds that had been deliberately kept poor by Council restrictions. Rachel Kim worked openly with alien scientists, advancing knowledge at a pace that 3 centuries of Council rule had made impossible. Admiral Cole stood in Geneva, watching representatives from across the galaxy sign the Compact Charter. David Ross stood beside her, older and more tired but satisfied. "We did it," he said quietly. "We actually did it." "We survived," Cole corrected. "But Ross, surviving was the point. We showed the galaxy that submission is not inevitable, that freedom is worth fighting for, that treaties should unite, not bind." Above them, the Compact's new flag flew beside Earth's banner. Its motto, proposed by the Tevari and adopted by all: "Never again shall treaties bind, only hearts unite." The galaxy would remember this time not for the battles fought or the ships destroyed, but for the moment humanity refused to accept oppression, and in doing so, reminded every species of their own capacity for courage. Treaties imposed by force had ended. Treaties built on respect had just begun.